What up, pretty people? Welcome to Talking Too Much with Jeremy A. Rodriguez. He is I, and I am him. Back like I never left, except I did. I went to Salt Lake City last week to watch the pro MMA debut of my buddy Joel Harrow. In fact, I did like an embedded style kind of behind the scenes journey for his fight week, and I look forward to putting out content about that. And I should be dropping a trailer for that soon. So stay tuned. But today we are talking UFC, and unfortunately I wasn't able to put out a video for Sirogon versus Rosenstroke, and you know what? I don't regret it, considering it wasn't a great card. That being said, Jimmy Rivera versus Pedro Munoz is badass, punishing leg kicks, and on the subject matter of leg kicks, we'll get to that later. Man, Sirogon, glad he won because I find him to be the more intriguing prospect at heavyweight. But in any case, we'll see. It looks like the most logical matchup is him versus Derek Lewis, set up potential #1 contender fight. Well, #2 contender behind John Jones, yada, yada, yada. I digress. What we really want to get into is UFC 259. And US 259 is so stacked. So stacked, in fact, I mean, if I talked about every single fight in depth that I'm interested in, I'd be here all night. And to be honest, it is super freaking late right now, and we're just getting cracking. So it is what it is. But in any case, UFC 259, these fights are awesome. And I'm going to begin with the fight that I am most conflicted about and simultaneously most intrigued by. It is the fight between Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan. The 135-pound strap is on the line. And, you know, this fight, very fun to break down. Very interesting matchup. Obviously, we have Aljamain, who is super long and lanky. And in his fight against Pedro Munoz, came out with such vigor and energy and was able to largely maintain that pace over the course of 3 rounds. And then, of course, in his next fight, just, man, blew the doors off Corey Sandhagen. And while, you know, you can put a little bit of grain of salt on that, knowing that likely if they fought again, it'd be a pretty different fight, you can literally almost say that about any matchup. But Aljo, I mean, really fun fighter. I mean, he's unorthodox. He likes to switch stances a lot, and he likes to push a really frenetic pace. Really enjoy his grappling sequences. I mean, he's shown like a great grappling with his submission finishes. I mean, his knee bar over Cody Stamann being one of the most outstanding ones you've seen in the cage, only to be outdone by Zabit like a week later or something. But still, like, Aljo clearly, I mean, with his submission over Sandhagen, showed that if he can get a hold of you and get to the positions he likes to be in, i.e. your back, which where both those finishes stated came from, he's incredibly dangerous no matter where the fight goes. You know, in order for Aljo to win, I think he's going to need to not get pushed backwards. Petr likes to push forward. He likes to push the pace. He likes the pace. He likes to melt people with pressure, with really nice fundamental Thai boxing. So I think one of Aljo's keys to victory here will be attacking up the middle to try to split that Thai guard and also use his superior reach. In fact, I would love for him to come out and have sort of a Kamaru Usman approach and work behind his jab from both orthodox and southpaw. And Aljo's going to switch stances no matter what. I mean, he likes to move a lot, and you know, obviously, I think it would behoove him to come in and out of range on angles to avoid the heavy counter-striking from Petr. But I think if he utilizes his movement and control the center of the octagon and keep Petr off of him and maybe even move Petr back, it would bode really well for him. There was a lot of success from Jose Aldo when he fought Petr, attacking the lead leg. But in order to defend his lead leg, Petr switched southpaw. When Petr switches southpaw, I'd like to see Aljo mirror his stance and not stay in an open stance. Meaning, if Aljamain stays orthodox, left hand forward, right hand back, as is his standard go-to, I would like to see him shift southpaw in those moments and look for opportunities to continue attacking Piotr's lead leg, which he was definitely hiding a bit in that Jose Aldo fight. Piotr is incredibly durable, but I think if Aljo gets too spastic and doesn't really invest in those leg kicks and utilize his range, whether it be behind a strong stinging jab or with his leg kicks, it could potentially be a long night for him. I think Aljo, it would behoove him to make these investments in the legs and up the middle and be sound defensively, because Aljo tends to make really big movements. I mean, it's gotten him in trouble not only in the fight against Munoz, where he would bite on decent feints and then get cracked with a follow-up shot, which can be incredibly dangerous because Piotr is a great combination puncher and likes to finish with kicks. So Aljo also got caught by Marlon Moraes, where he reacted very heavy to try to catch a kick and turned into a knee and sent him dabbing, which he's been a really good sport about. What I would really like to see Piotr do to win would be, kind of the same thing as Aljamain bounds into range, chop the leg. And, this is going to sound like a cop-out at this point because kicking the leg is just the meta now. So I know this isn't like breaking news that kicking the leg is effective. But when you're talking about trying to take away the explosiveness of someone as long and sticky and capable of setting up takedowns from all over the place as Aljo, you're definitely going to want to take away some of his ability to move in and out of range, being that he has a considerable reach advantage in both the legs and the arms. Piotr's going to want to use his feints a lot to try to draw up those big movements from Aljo, and additionally, he's going to need to keep his back up off the fence. I think there's a strong possibility that if Aljo gets him up against the fence in the later rounds, it can begin to wear on Piotr, who tends to kind of pick up speed, or at least that's what he did against Uriah Faber and Jose Aldo, which he seemed to be pretty measured, looked for ways to set up his offense, switched stances, maintained pretty sound defense, and had really clean boxing entries, changing levels with his body punches and head punches and finishing with strong kicks, that potentially he could use the low kick to exploit Aljo, just as Munoz was almost successful in doing in their fight. There were a few times where Aljo got off base, getting really wild in his unorthodox movement, changing angles and kind of overreaching, and Pedro was able to kick his leg out underneath him. So I could see Piotr doing a lot of that. So yeah, I think Jan would greatly benefit from occupying Sterling's space as much as possible and melting him with pressure like he did Jose Aldo. Obviously, Aljo and Aldo are very different fighters. I would certainly give Aljamain the benefit of the doubt in terms of cardio compared to Jose, especially at this stage in their respective careers. I also give the benefit of strength of schedule to Aljamain. Aljamain has fought like the entire 135-pound division. He's been really putting in work, and it shows. He's grown a lot as a martial artist, a lot more comfortable on his feet. Obviously, still, as I mentioned, has some defensive liabilities, but overall, it has looked great these last few fights. Piotr, nothing against his ability. He's clearly a world-class fighter and could potentially be trouble for anyone in this division, but he, his last two victories that positioned him for number one contender and got him the belt were over, fighters that are clearly past their prime. Jose did a fantastic effort, even winning the second on my card, but Jose just doesn't have the same durability. His endurance is truly questionable. To make it to the fifth round was amazing, but that fight was over in the fourth as far as I was concerned. But overall, this fight really excites me. 135 is so, so, so stacked. I mean, to me, it's certainly the second best division in the UFC behind 155. And I can't say enough how excited I am for that fight. It's truly a coin toss, but I got to be honest, I'm pulling for Aljo. I mean, here I am in my Knicks jersey. He's from New York, from Long Island, I believe, and I'm actually originally from Williston Park, Long Island, and my bias is going to shine through on this one for sure because Aljo and I have shared interests in MMA and then, of course, real estate as well. So I'm pulling for him. Piotr is a hell of a story. I mean, dude, hard as they come out of Siberia. I mean, he's an absolute savage and, certainly could end up making a statement on Saturday. But, as much of a coin toss as it is, I'm pulling for Aljo here. As for the next most interesting fight on the card, Amanda Nunez versus Megan Anderson. No, I'm just kidding. I don't find this fight to be that compelling, to be honest. No disrespect. Amanda Nunez is certainly the lady goat. She's fantastic. The lioness is awesome. Her resume is everything they say it is, right? That being said, 135, 145, these divisions are not very strong divisions. There is just the talent in the rest of the UFC makes the female 135 and 145 pound divisions. I mean, I can't even speak to the 145 pound division because they literally signed fighters off the street to fight either Felicia Spencer, or Megan, and then Cyborg's gone. So pretty much it's whoever they can tee up to set up one of those contenders to fight Amanda Nunez, and Germaine de Randamie didn't want to fight her at 145, and she already lost to Amanda twice at 135. So, I mean, I know I ragged on this division quite a bit in my last video, but yeah, 135 is desperate for answers, and 145 at this point literally just exists so Amanda Nunez can be double champ. So Megan, obviously big, long, has crisp striking, looks good doing it. And contrary to Courtney Casey's, controversial statements on her appearance, I mean, I think she's a bit of a smoke show. I'm not gonna lie, she's a tall, powerful woman. So you keep doing your thing, Megan. And as for Amanda, congratulations to her and Nina Askaroff for having their little girl. I think Amanda Nunez via any way she wants it to go. If Megan Anderson is still even within 50% of the fighter she was when she fought Holly Holm, then, I mean, Amanda should be able to get this to the ground and control it. I wouldn't be surprised if she gets inside of Megan's range and just counters the hell out of her and puts pressure on her. I expect Amanda to be pretty measured and to work her offense and give Megan respect, knowing that she's a heavy hitter. But I foresee this fight likely being one-way traffic. But what do I know? I shouldn't even be picking these fights. I'm terrible at it. I can do all the research in the world, and I'm probably going to, at best, be 50%. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, every fight is 50%, especially when fighters have attributes, which leads me to the main event. And I'm going to talk about the main event, and then I'll get to some other fights on the card that I really love, because I mentioned Casey Kenny earlier, and he's on this card. This card is so stinking stacked. But the main event, Izzy Stylebender Adesanya versus Polish Power Jan Blachowicz. And I don't know what the odds are, but I know Izzy's probably a huge favorite, and honestly, for good reason. I mean, Izzy is as special as they come. I mean, he exudes it, truly. And I'm not trying to simp for the cat like I was for Derek Lewis last time I was here talking on camera, but Izzy is a special fighter. Whether it's 185, 205, I think he's going to have the most crisp striking. I think he is the fastest fighter in both those respective divisions, and I mean, there's a lot of different ways this fight can go. I'll start with Jan, though, in terms of what he brings to the table, because Jan is kind of slept on in this regard. I think he's more than just a heavy puncher, even though he's been sending fools to hell in his last few fights. He's a hell of a story, having been 1-4 and then to rally back and win all the fights he's has thus far. I think 5-1, something like that. But I'm probably wrong on that, to be honest, but I don't care to look it up right now. But Jan obviously can punch hard, but I think it's his body kicks or just his kicks in general that are really going to determine where he ends up in this fight, whether it's on his back, asleep on the canvas, or putting some hurt on Izzy and making him wish he didn't move up to this weight class. Jan is sneakily underrated when it comes to his kickboxing. I mean, he was doing an awesome job pushing into Dominic Reyes's range when they fought, and landing heavy when he got there. And part of this, I think, is absolutely tactical fault from Dominic Reyes, who, in my opinion, probably shouldn't have just trained with his brothers for that camp. It seems kind of like a bad idea, but COVID camps, I don't know. I don't know what his situation was, but a lot of that fight, he was moving back on sort of a straight line and just shelling up, and to shell up in front of a power puncher, not the greatest idea. And then to shell up and then get hit and decide you want to counter heavy in the pocket against Jan, probably not a good idea either. And you know what? That's not how Izzy fights. I mean, if Izzy's shown us anything from that fight against Yoel Romero, is that he's not going to overextend himself. He's not an idiot. He's not going to get emotional. He's not going to put himself in unnecessary danger, because he knows that his ring generalship and his movement, his speed, his technique is going to, do what it's been doing. Dominate range and hurt people. And Jan's been finished before. I mean, he's certainly going to have the size advantage. And, he has submission wins and is also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, Jan has paths to victory potentially here. But I don't really see it as his style to push Izzy up against the cage and grind him. I mean, is it a possibility? Sure, but we haven't really seen it effectively done to this point. The nearest back we can go where Izzy was being controlled on the ground at all was against Marvin Vettori, who, in his own right is a large 185 pounder. But I mean, I have a hard time thinking that Israel, is gonna be in that situation flat on his back and not shrimping and creating a scramble to get back up to his feet and reestablish his range. But he's also, in that time, been promoted from blue belt to purple belt. And I know it was a big deal for him. And, as much as he's alluded to wanting a submission in his UFC tenure, I don't think it will go that way. I mean, the path to victory for Izzy is going to remain in his crisp striking. I don't see him trying to get in too many boxing exchanges with Jan, especially early, but rather continue to use his kicks, his feints, and demand respect when Jan comes into his bubble. Jan, his body kick can definitely do some damage on Izzy. Izzy did eat a few body kicks in the short amount of time he was in the cage with Paulo Costa, but he also showed really effective defense, kind of rolled with it and was ready to answer with punches. Now, I don't know how willing he'll be to stand in front of Jan in that case. I mean, he might eat it, maybe throw the kick, maybe if he catches it, just dip out and circle out, because Jan's been watching. You don't want to eat a body kick and then, Jan is over here trying to missile you with an uppercut where he thinks you're going to lean after doing that counter. But I think another equally effective way Jan can win this fight is attacking Izzy's legs. Much easier said than done, but Izzy with this range, I mean, the last thing to leave when he exits range is going to be his legs. So Izzy likes to slide in and out. He's not very bouncy, so I don't see a scenario where he gets kicked and he loses his balance. I mean, the dude, freaking moves, like a jaguar, So it's gonna be hard to get him too off balance. So ultimately, does Jan have potential paths to victory here? Yes. Obviously he's dangerous. He can end the fight potentially in one punch. He can. But, as wholesome as Jan is, holding his little cactus over the Hoover Dam, and his interesting story about the freaking rope that he got, that's like apparently like a superstitious lucky thing from France, from the guy who hung himself. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, you got to watch The Embedded to hear that story if you haven't. He's a wholesome, friendly guy, but I'm going to go with Izzy in this fight. I mean, I just think he's too fast. He's too dynamic. His finishing ability is very slept on. And, ultimately, I think the way he navigates the cage, his footwork, his range, it will more than likely be too much for Jan. As for the rest of the card, which is awesome, I mean, if, like I said, if I spoke on every single fight I'm excited for in this card, I'd be here all night. But the fourth from the top is going to be Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober. Fun fight. I mean, interestingly enough, this is a very fun matchup between the two of them, in terms of, the people they've lost to before. Islam's loss being from a YOLO knockout. I mean, he got one shot KO'd, and that kind of, ended his hype prematurely. But Drew Dober is very capable of doing that. And then Drew Dober, his most recent loss being to Beneil Dariush, who's a fantastic grappler, as is obviously Islam Makhachev. And, Drew Dober, he's going to want to stay on his feet. I mean, Islam is solid striking. I mean, he's got a nice jab, very clean fundamentals. He gets a lot of props for being just as good of a grappler as Khabib, with cleaner stand-up. I mean, remains to be seen, right? But still, Islam can be a problem. But Drew's always a danger for that one-hitter quitter. Has solid stand-up. Obviously, he fights, I believe, out of Team Elevation up there. I feel like I've been shouting them out a lot lately. But Drew is a great fighter, but I'm gonna go with Islam there. Rakic versus Thiago Santos. That should be a fun fight. I mean, that could potentially be fight of the night. I mean, I don't know if that goes 3 rounds, to be honest. I mean, Thiago looked pretty not great in his last fight. So, after his previous showing before that being obviously a 5-round fight with John Jones. So, we'll see. Rakic is a guy with the better momentum. I believe his last fight was against Anthony Smith, and he looked good doing it, though, it would have been nice to see him go for the finish instead of celebrating with however long was left in the fight at the end of it. So, prelims. The prelims are sick.
A few moments later.
All right, well, my camera died, so that sucked. But in any case, the prelims are awesome. The top 2 fights on the prelims feature, again, 135-pound fighters, and they're really compelling matchups. The main event of the prelim card being former bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny, who fights out of MMA Lab local. So yeah, that should be a fun one. That fight, very interesting. Dominic Cruz, of course, with this elusive, herky-jerky, interesting footwork that, seemed to elude people for years. Most recently solved by Henry Cejudo by just chopping through both legs, not giving a damn, and, being a devastating power striker. Do I think Casey is a devastating power striker? No, but he's well-rounded and is durable and can hurt Dominic, yes. Now, can Dominic likely, get Casey to walk into some traps, show effective counterboxing, and, do what he does? Sure. that honestly, that fight is a toss up. It just goes to show how deep that division is, and a big step up for Casey. And if he wins, that's going to be a nice notch on his belt. Another one I'm super excited for that's pretty under the radar is another local MMA lab guy, Phillips. And Phillips is a fun guy to watch. Dude moves like a freaking panther. And he's going to be fighting Yang Sedong, who, of course, great wrestle boxer, team alpha male dude, punches hard, strong wrestler, great shape. And that should be an interesting fight. I can see that one really pushing the pace and being a challenge for both men. And I gotta say, of the 135-pound guys that fight out of MMA lab, Kyler's one that I really have my eye on. I mean, everything he does looks really dangerous, and the dude is very aggressive, well-rounded, and seems to be just an explosive guy with a lot of creativity, creates a lot of pressure, just with his sheer just willingness to mix it up. I mean, both guys are really tough, and that's like a kind of sleeper for under the radar fight of the night right there. Next, Joseph Benavidez versus Askaroff. That's a really scrappy fight. I mean, obviously, Joe is known for being very scrambly, and Askaroff only has one non-win on his record, being a draw to Brandon Moreno, who will now be fighting for the belt again against Davison Figueiredo after that awesome 5-round banger a couple months back. So that fun fight. I mean, Askaroff is a very, very capable grappler. I mean, we've seen the Dagestani takeover with just how many really dangerous grapple-heavy fighters are coming out of that region, and that's an interesting matchup. Joe was saying earlier this week, Joseph Benavidez, that is, how he is cognizant of the fact that he may be done getting title shots, which I think can either make him an incredibly dangerous challenge, just going in there with no weight on his shoulders and ready to just kill or be killed, or could essentially show that he's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. I don't know. He spent the majority of his camp training with Aljamain Sterling, who moved to Vegas, and they're fighting out of Extreme Couture, and what a great combination there. Two dudes who are gonna work their ass off and just be in the fight until you put them to sleep. So interesting matchup there. For the last fight in the prelims, Cara France versus Rogerio, Bontorin. Kai has fallen short a few times in big moments. Most recently, he was in position to be the number 1 contender and lost to Brandon Moreno. He may have had a fight after that, I forget. I just know that he lost his last fight. And Kai is a talented guy, obviously a city kickboxing guy, and this is gonna say a lot as to whether or not he beats Rogerio here, because he really needs to get a win next to his name. It's 125 is interesting division, and it puts him in a good place to where if he wins this fight, he can shoot a shot. I mean, maybe shoot to get a matchup with Joseph, should he win, because Benavidez isn't going to be back in the title picture with just 1 win. I mean, I guess the last fight I'm interested in the early prelims is going to be Carlos Ulberg, who is the last of the city kickboxing guys fighting on this card. And you may remember his last fight where he had that nasty, just like slip, pull back, check hook that just straight up sent his dude to the shadow realm. So I think that'll be a fun one to watch. The guy he's fighting is 7-1, Kennedy Zechukwu. I mean, I don't think I'm saying that right, but I could see that being a fun fight too. But of the early prelims is probably the one I'm I'm the only one I'm really interested in. So we'll see what happens from there. Thanks again for checking out this video. And of course, if there's any fights you think I missed or I was absolutely wrong on, please let me know. If you make some money picking any of the people that I gave the nod in terms of my best guess for the fight, please let me know. I promise I won't charge a commission. But yeah, till next time, I'm looking forward to watching this card. It's going to be awesome, and looking forward to putting out some content afterwards. And again, keep an eye out for that trailer for the mini doc I'm doing on my buddy and his pro MMA debut. So, peace.